Okay, my friends, it is Tuesday, April 15th. If you're an American, happy tax day. Your taxes are due today. Just a little public service announcement. The big story today is that the Russian economy is in serious trouble. There are more signs that the Russian economy is going to be in trouble. And the Russians can't really last long. They're going to need some kind of deal before long, within about a year from what I can understand here. And I'll explain how this works. Kremlin panics as Russian Urals crude oil prices nears crucial $50 mark. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov attributed the price decline to the U.S. decision to introduce tariffs for most countries in the world. It is possible that what Trump was trying to do with tariffs won't actually work there, but it might actually help defeat Russia. I mean, it's a mind-numbing thing to think about, but that is possible. Okay, here it is in the Kyiv Independent, and there's more to the story. Here's Anton Gerashenko talking about a worldwide drop in oil stocks threatens to leave Russia without funds for waging a war. Now, it's not just what Trump does. There's more to the story, but Trump's tariff policy is causing the global economy to slow down, and as a result, for oil prices to fall. Now, I showed you the chart the other day. The stocks dropped significantly. They kind of made a little bit of a rebound, but there's also uncertainty that wasn't there before that still is going to cause the world economy to slow down a bit. Okay, Brent crude oil has fallen in price by about 20%. The price has fallen below $60 a barrel. And then Russian Urals crude oil has accordingly fallen below $50. Now, that's important because they need about the budget is predicated, about a third of the budget is on oil and gas, and it's predicated on $70 per barrel as a price. Now, when you're shipping it through a pipeline, it's real cheap. When you're shipping it through, your shadow fleet that you have to kind of work around the system, it's not as cheap. There's costs there, but yeah, okay. So that's what's going on here. Here's another factor beyond the shadow fleet. And again, Joe Biden's tariffs just before he left office on the shadow fleet helped significantly. But OPEC Plus in May 2025, OPEC Plus plans to, that's the oil producing nations of the world, they kind of get together in a cartel and set the price, plans to accelerate the production increasing it by 411,000 barrels per day instead of the previously planned 135,000 barrels per day. Well, why are they doing that? The strategic objective of oil exporting countries is to make it unprofitable to produce shale oil in the USA with very low production costs. Okay, now this has happened before, believe it or not. So do you remember ISIS, the Islamic State of, it's either ISIS or ISIL, depending on, Obama chose to use the word ISIL all the time, which meant, and the Levant, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria is ISIS. Okay, so they were running around stealing everybody's oil and selling it, and that's how they were funding things while they were busy beheading people. Okay, so at the time, Saudi Arabia did the same kind of thing, and they got a twofer. They starved ISIS they deprived them of a lot of their revenue, and they stopped fracking in the United States. That's what we're talking about, the shale oil fracking in the U.S. And so that's going to be in Saudi's interest and other oil-producing nations, and it's going to starve the Russians of a lot of their revenue. Okay, OPEC cuts mean that Brent would fall to just under $40 a barrel in late 2026, Goldman Sachs and analysts say. And Trump's going to take credit for that $40 a barrel for whatever reason. Kazakhstan is already preparing scenarios of a budget optimization in case of oil price decrease to $55 or $50 per barrel. Like, they're worried about that. So if you're an oil producing nation, that's going to hurt unless you can just keep pumping out more. And Russia doesn't really have the means to get it wherever it's going easily and that sort of thing. Okay, for Russia, its 2025 budget, in which oil export revenues play an important role, is approved based on a price of about $70 per barrel. There are additional costs for both maintaining the shadow fleet and payments to intermediaries. If the oil drops to $40 and below and stays at this level for a long time, Russia will actually have no funds to continue the special military operation. That's not entirely true, but it will greatly deprive Russia of its revenue. This deprivation of the shadow fleet will be another additional factor in worsening the situation for Russia. It's not at all clear what resources the Russian authorities have to protect these tankers, especially in such strategically important regions as the Baltic Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. It should be recalled that the German authorities recently confirmed the seizure of a tanker, and so were the Estonians, the Finns, there's been a number of these kind of things where these tankers are getting pulled over. Okay, Russia is now simultaneously facing serious economic challenges while trying to run the special military operation. So he should be a little worried. Putin should be a little worried about this. Okay, at the same time, VTB, that's a bank in Russia, the second largest bank in Russia, has a huge hole in its capital, about 2 trillion rubles. And that's not nothing, even in rubles. Because a VTB bank, the central bank, even postponed raising the short-term liquidity ratio for 6 months. Money needs to be poured into capital, but there is no money, so the central bank is just changing the ratios. Sure, why not? VTB Bank is the second largest bank in Russia. Okay, the Russian economy continues to implode, but Russians are increasingly enlisting in the military. And the reason is they think the war is almost over, so they're going to enlist, get their bonus, and that's, cross their fingers and hope they're not sent to the front anytime soon. So that's continuing. I think that's part of perhaps even why Putin might be talking about peace. We want peace. We want peace. Maybe that's part of the plan. I don't know. Next big story, second big story. This is Donald Trump's post yesterday. The war between Russia and Ukraine is Biden's war, not mine. I just got here and for 4 years during my term had no problem in preventing it from happening. Well, it was still ongoing, but you didn't have a greater breakout is what he's saying. President Putin and everyone else respected your president. I had nothing to do with this war, but I am working diligently to get the death and destruction to stop. If the 2020 presidential election was not rigged, and it was in so many ways, that horrible war would never have happened. President Zelensky and crooked Joe Biden did an absolutely horrible job in allowing this travesty to begin. What about Putin? This is Putin's war. It's not your war. It's not Biden's war. It's Putin's war, and it wasn't President Zelensky or crooked Joe Biden, who did an absolutely horrible job. It's Putin. The blame's just not getting placed where it belongs. Okay. Biden didn't start Russia's war. Obama didn't start Russia's war. Clinton didn't start Russia's war. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, remember him from Ghostbusters? Didn't start Russia's war, but none of them finished it. And Trump hasn't taken a chance to help Ukraine win it. That is his choice and his alone, says Gabrielis Landsbergis, the former foreign minister from Lithuania. Okay, so Trump's asked if he's going to add extra sanctions after this horrible Palm Sunday massacre. And here's what he has to say about adding new sanctions.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Considering additional sanctions against Russia after their latest attack, and do you have
The question was, are you going to place additional sanctions after Russia's Palm Sunday attack?
an update on the rate and when you might announce them?
Well, I already have sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe.
What?
I stopped it.
We're talking about the previous administration. Okay. He's not serious about answering that kind of question. And then when he was talking about Zelensky, he said this. This was ridiculous.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know.
Have you spoken to Zelensky is the question?
He's always looking to purchase missiles. He's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles.
Well, when you start a war, he didn't start the war. Putin started the war. Okay. Trump's advisors are torn between Russia's intentions and U.S. and approach to it. So the advisors, there's a split between, say, Marco Rubio and Keith Kellogg on one side. They recommend caution in dealing with Putin in opposition to the Kremlin's territorial demands. And then you have Steve Witkoff on the other side, and Trump seems to be listening to Steve Witkoff. Here's Witkoff on Fox News the other day. He's asked by Hannity what he thinks.
I would imagine Vladimir Putin probably would want to be in business with the U.S. and with Europe Is that a potential that could come out of this?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, this peace deal is about these so-called 5 territories, but there's so much more to it. There's security protocols. There's no NATO, Article 5. I mean, it's just
Okay, give up your 5 territories. That's the fastest way to peace. No NATO, that's number 2. And then you can have a deal.
A lot of detail attached to it. It's a complicated situation, rooted in some real problematic things happening between the 2 countries, and I think we might be on the verge of something that would be very, very important for the world at large. On top of that, I believe there's a possibility to reshape the Russian-United States relationship through some very compelling commercial opportunities that I think give real stability to the region too. Partnerships create stability.
Okay, partnerships create stability. We thought that with Nord Stream, where certainly Russia will never go to war and lose that. Didn't work out so well. And I'm coming to increasingly think that Trump sees himself as Nixon with China in the way that he's going to try to deal with Putin. I don't think it's going to work out so well. Here's John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor.
So what's he doing here, Ambassador, with Ukraine once again?
Well, I think it's very clear his sympathies are with Vladimir Putin and the Russians. The idea that somehow Ukraine started this war is total nonsense, and history will bear that out.
Yep, that's exactly right. Okay. All right. Incredible revelations from Lavrov, the diplomat. He plainly states that the Russian Federation, successor of the Russian Empire, traditionally does not make international treaties, but deals based on understanding. Just deals based on understanding. A handshake. Russia is only interested in official documents and international institutions for as long as they are to Russia's benefit, he talks about. And this is why Dmitriev entered the negotiation process from the Russian side. He represents the interests of the Russian Kremlin's group and speaks with understanding and unofficially. So he's able to say directly to Witkoff what the diplomats won't say, and that's why he's there. But, Nixon talked about the same thing. The Russians only honor those things when it's in their interest. If it's not in their interest, the piece of paper it's printed on isn't worth it. Okay, here's Alexander Dugin talking about all Russia's global war plans rely first on occupying Ukraine. This was what Putin was saying, or what Alexander Dugin was saying. He's Putin's brain, right? He's Putin's ideologist. What he was saying before he was urged to keep these statements out of Western media. Listen to this.
Without Ukraine, Russia cannot become once more the empire. With Ukraine inside of Russian zone of control, it will become empire once more. That is a kind of law, nothing personal. This war or military operation, special military operation in Ukraine is about that. It is about geopolitics.
Yep, it's about empire. It's nothing personal. We just need to dominate you as slaves because we need an empire. Okay, last little bit is U.S. House Democrats have introduced a Ukraine support bill amid Trump's Russia stance. The bill includes aid for Ukraine, sanctions against Russia, challenging Trump's conciliatory approach toward Moscow. Nothing is going to happen with that. The Speaker of the House controls the agenda on the floor. It'll go nowhere. Now, it'll change in 2 years or in a year and a half. It'll change when Democrats take the House of Representatives, which are almost 100% likely to do at this point, given all the waves that have been made by the Trump administration. But then Trump has to sign it. And so it's not likely that he's necessarily going to sign it either. Okay, I'll leave you with this last meme. My tariffs aren't working, as Trump calls tech support. Have you tried turning them on and off again? All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.